Urban legends are meant to caution, enlighten, or frighten just for the sake of some primal excitation. They often represent societal fears that linger beneath the surface of our collective conscious. They broach the terrifying mystery of the unknown, our compulsions for superstition, our anxieties, and routinely, the moral quandaries of the day. Urban legends are modern myths, and therefore rich in symbology and murky sentiments from our subconscious. Here are 10 popular folk tales of the modern variety. Number 10. Spring-Heeled Jack. Appearing in the Victorian era, an entity known as Spring-Heeled Jack terrorized the population of Britain with his ghoulish antics during the mid-19th century. He is portrayed as appearing like a gentleman through his fancy dress, but his aristocracy was undercut by his sinister countenance and diabolic air. He earned his moniker through his ability to bound over fences and onto roofs to make his escape after harassing, and even occasionally breathing flames onto his victims. An alternate embellished description has him wearing a cape, white tights, a helmet, having red burning eyes, and claws on his hands. Spring-Heeled Jack received official recognition, like few other urban legends, as stories of his attacks were often printed in newspapers, and he was even spoken of by the mayor of London. Over time, reports of Jack faded, but he is still occasionally used as inspiration for creative works. A supernatural creature, a prankster, a case of mass hysteria, it's impossible to know which. But at the very least, we can conjecture, perhaps because of his appearance as a gentleman, it was a critique on the excessive propriety, snobbery, and classism of Victorian England. Number 9. The Vanishing Hitchhiker. As with most urban legends, there are multiple versions to every story, but the crux tends to be the same. Someone is driving along a highway and decides to pick up a hitchhiker. They converse with the passenger until at a crossroads, or as the car is still moving, the hitchhiker vanishes. The driver then comes to discover that the hitchhiker had died at that spot on the roadway where he had disappeared, and the night of the ghostly encounter was on the anniversary of the hitchhiker's death. Another version has the hitchhiker being dropped off at a house and forgetting their sweater or scarf in the car. When the driver goes to return the garment, he is greeted by the hitchhiker's parents, who tell him that their child had died in a car accident the same day the year before. There is also a variation where the roles are flipped, and a hitchhiker comes to learn, after getting into a car, usually an older model, and being given a lift, that the car was actually an apparition, driven by a phantom who was involved in a wreck years before. Perhaps the legend is a parable about road safety, or a comment on how effects of tragedy linger. Who knows? It's a spooky tale regardless. Number 8. Polybius. In the 1980s, a strange game machine called Polybius appeared in a Portland, Oregon arcade. The game proved so engrossing that the lines would form around the block just for a chance to play it. However, players soon began experiencing awful side effects from the gameplay, including insomnia, hallucinations, amnesia, and nightmares. Additionally suspect were the men in suits who appeared every so often to retrieve data from the machine. As mysteriously as it arrived, the arcade game just disappeared. There are claims that Polybius was a government experiment on the potential psychological effects of a video game, designed to be both absorbing and distressing. Although taking place in the 80s, the urban legend first appeared in the 2000s. Polybius was important to just how addictive game playing would become in the coming decades.
I wonder what's in this glowing barrel. What? Nunchucks? Those aren't even Australian. Oh, great. So I'm dead now. Fine. I'm sick of this stupid game anyway. Yes, I am just 4 power wands away from an anti-gravity lozenge.
Number 7. Black-Eyed Kids. A fairly recent urban legend, black-eyed children are kids who appear youthfully endearing, except for their soulless black eyes, which stare heartlessly into the people unfortunate to encounter them. The children appear on doorsteps after ringing the bell, or beside cars after knocking on the window. They make seemingly innocent requests, like for a lift to the movie theater, or a phone to call their parents with. The kids are reported to possess an eerie aura, which instills a sense of terror and anxiety in their victims. These symptoms, thankfully, prevent most from granting the kids' requests, and those who did are not here to speak about it. Some claim that black-eyed kids are vampires waiting to be invited into the house. Others posit that they are demons, or even aliens, who wish to inflict any kind of ghastly punishment you can imagine on those they meet. The demonic child trope is common in horror movies, and could be a question about whether evil is born or made. Number 6. The Hookman. A cautionary tale for amorous teenagers on Lover's Lane, and tragically comes to fruition in real life with the Zodiac and Texarkana murders. The Hookman deals with common teenage behaviors and those in society obsessed with controlling it. There are different versions of this legend, centered around the same premise. A couple is parked on a secluded Lover's Lane and hear a continual scratching noise on their door. They take it to be nearby branches and think nothing of it. Soon after, a bulletin comes on the radio, warning that a dangerous inmate with a hook for a hand has escaped a nearby institution. The couple is frightened and they decide to leave. When they arrive back at the girlfriend's home, her boyfriend walks around to open her door and finds a hook stuck in the door handle. Another variation has the boyfriend getting out of the car to relieve himself, and the girlfriend hearing scraping noises on the roof while she waits for him. Fearful after hearing the news bulletin, she gets out of the car to locate her boyfriend, only to discover he's been murdered and is hanging from a tree with his fingernails scratching on the roof. The story represents the social anxiety around the rise of teenage culture and their growing independence in the 1950s, which eventually led to the revolutionary sexual liberation of the 60s. Number 5. Paul is Dead. The Beatles are arguably the most popular band in the history of rock, and the originator of the musical group in its modern form, consisting of unique personalities rather than a front person and everyone else. The media, tabloids, fans, and those incapable of resisting the pull of a researchable conspiracy theory have convinced themselves that Paul McCartney died in the 60s and was replaced by the winner of a lookalike contest. People poured through lyrics, photos, interviews, and anything they could find to confirm this myth. Some of the most popular pieces of evidence were the fact that Paul McCartney was the only member barefoot on the famous cover of Abbey Road, the lyrics to the song I Am the Walrus, and the final part of Strawberry Fields Forever, played backwards. Paul McCartney refuted the theory, which quelled most of the fervor, but people are always loath to surrender a good tale. The legend could be inspired by the fact that celebrities and musicians are rarely who they portray themselves to be. Public personas can be adopted by lookalike imposters with relative ease, because like an acting role, the part is fabricated. There is always great outrage when we're forced to admit what our idols are really like.
You must be aware of this. For a long time, there was a huge rumor. At one point, a conspiracy theory, if you like, that Paul McCartney was dead and that you are not Paul McCartney, you're an imposter pretending to be Paul McCartney. How did this come about?
Found me out.
Number 4. Delhi Monkey Man. India has its own spring-heeled jack of sorts, and somehow it's even odder than a fire-breathing aristocrat on springs. The Monkey Man of Delhi, as the name implies, is a creature that is half monkey and half man, who uses metal claws and brute strength to assail those he comes across. Its terrible spree began in May 2001. During warmer months, when the humidity becomes unbearable, many people in India sleep on their roofs to avoid the heat. This made them ideal targets for the Monkey Man, who, being a primate, was able to jump and climb from structure to structure with ease. Victims were terrified by his red eyes and strange features, along with an incongruous helmet he wore, containing red and green lights on it. Unfortunately, due to the panic caused by the creature, many people were injured, and 2 even died from their falls off buildings and downstairs. The possibility of such a beast existing is not so far-fetched, as the Soviet Union purportedly tried to create a super soldier through mixing primate and human DNA. In the age of CRISPR, this urban legend seems disturbingly apropos. Number 3. Garden City Ghost Car. This urban legend has footage to bolster its claims of veracity, or to refute it, depending on your stance. The Garden City PD undertook pursuit of a white car driving erratically, which is not an unusual occurrence. However, its maneuvers are said to defy physics, leading to the only logical conclusion that the car was actually spectral. The most baffling aspect of the footage is how the car suddenly appears on the opposite side of the fence without destroying it. Some say the chain link was only attached at the top, which allowed the car to slip under. Others refute this by pointing out the fact that the fence is perfectly still in the entire video and does not so much as ripple immediately after the car passed under it. There is also the fact that the area behind the fence was wooded and did not have any roads leading out, yet the car clearly disappears in the distance. It's rare that an alleged ghost video comes from a reliable source, which allows this footage to help fuel the unending desire of human curiosity to find verifiable evidence of the paranormal. Number 2. The baby roast. There are many dreadful myths about LSD, ranging from its ability to make you insane from a bad trip, that blotters have been mistaken for lick and stick tattoos by children, that you can experience LSD flashbacks throughout your life after doing it once, and that it changes your DNA, amongst other things. There is an unverified anecdote of a man who reportedly thought he was a glass of orange juice for the rest of his life after a bad trip, and he remained terrified of being spilt forever thereafter. The baby roast is one of the most infamous drug scare stories. It involves a teenage babysitter, high on acid, who mistakes a baby for a turkey. She is instructed to put the baby to bed and the turkey in the oven, but tragically mistakes the two. The parents arrive home and are confused to find a turkey in the crib, before making a horrifying discovery. The horrors of substance use and addiction are all too real, and these silly myths often obfuscate the real dangers through their ridiculousness. Number 1. The stolen kidney. Perhaps the most widely circulated urban legend, the stolen kidney, is ostensibly a tale about a purloined organ, but reveals deeper fears of how vulnerable our bodies are, and highlights the pitfalls of lust, along with a measure of hypochondriac repulsion and queasiness to top it off. In this tale, a man meets a woman at a hotel bar and is invited up to her room. Suddenly feeling ill, he lies on the bed and blacks out. He awakes in an ice bath with a sharp pain in his back. He reaches back to find a bloody line of stitches. At the hospital, he is told he has had his kidney stolen in a black market scam. The legend is a placeholder for the hazards inherent in following your desires instead of your intellect. Thanks for watching, everyone. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and clang that bell if you'd like more.